Australia. I'll give you a short bio about Margie before she can start with her presentation. Margie is a Director of Library Services at the University of Wollongong in Australia. She provides leadership and direction for library services, spanning 6 onshore campus locations and guidance for offshore library partnerships in the UAE and Asia. She is currently the chair of the Council of Australian University Librarians, CAUL, and chair of the Australian ORCID governance group. She is playing an integral role in the establishment of the International Alliance of Research Library Associations. Margie's key interests include leadership development, and she has contributed to the development of the profession through mentoring and teaching in programs such as the CAUL Leadership Institute, the Caudit Leadership Institute, and Aurora. She is also a member of the editorial board for the journal Performance Measurement and Metrics. Colleagues, you're all welcome here, and we're looking forward to a wonderful webinar that involves libraries transforming lives. I think it's a good topic, given that libraries are the heart and beat of the institutions that we belong to and higher institutions of learning, as well as within our communities. Before wasting any more time, I would like to give Margie a wonderful South African welcome. Margie, you're welcome, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. Is the sound coming through okay?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly fine. Thank you.
Good morning, and I'm delighted to meet with you today and to share CAUL, the Council of Australian University Librarians, report on its contribution to the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. To begin, I'd like to extend my deep appreciation to Sivawe for the invitation, and to Teresa and Ingrid for making this event possible and making it so smooth for me to join you today. So let's begin. At CAUL, and I'm sure you do too, we believe that society is transformed through the power of research, teaching and learning. And we believe that university libraries are at the forefront of strategy and activities that support the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And we do this by promoting literacies, enabling free, open and borderless access to knowledge. And we do this through partnerships and collaboration so we can preserve the world's culture and heritage. And it's through these critical activities we position university libraries as essential knowledge infrastructures for both national and global capacity and capability building initiatives. And we're advocates for resources, services and engagement to strengthen the impact and reach of education and research. Our nations benefit significantly from the activities of university libraries. Libraries strengthen the impact of education and research through aspirations for fair, affordable and open access to information and knowledge, and through advancing needed literacies, including information and digital literacies to enable students, staff, citizens to thrive in what is becoming an increasingly digital and networked world. So some context to the Sustainable Development Goals. They were agreed by the United Nations 193 member states, including Australia, on the 25th of September in 2015 in New York. The Australian Government is a signatory to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. an international agreement to make the world a better place for all of its citizens by setting targets related to the 17 goals. It's an agenda that will become increasingly visible in federal, state, territory and local government strategies and for policies over time. And in Australia, it's being adopted by professions, businesses, banks, and of course universities, as well as a whole range of organisations in the public, private and for-profit sectors. IFLA's consistent position is that access to information is essential in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals, and that libraries are not only key partners for governments, but are already contributing to the progress towards the achievement of the 17 goals. You may already be familiar with IFLA's International Advocacy Plan, which aims to establish an engaged community of advocates who will clearly articulate the significant opportunities to increase the profile and impact of library and information professionals in the achievement of these goals. Today, I'm going to share with you CAUL's approach towards advancing the SDGs. For those of us who are fortunate to live and work in countries with sustainable economies, it's truly sobering to consider that half of the world's population lacks access to information online. And the impact of this social inequity is significant and plays out on our campuses daily. In Australia, many of our students have entered into higher education through increasing participation pathways, where we target students from low socioeconomic status backgrounds, those who might be first in family, those who are Aboriginal or of indigenous backgrounds, and of course mature age channels. What I'm sharing with you on the screen are elements of the CAUL's constitution, and this is important. It's because it's through the constitution we showcase our commitment to advancing social and knowledge equity. And in the knowledge society, libraries should and do provide access and opportunity for all, and we should be very proud of this. So now I want to share with you some cases that underscore the role and the value of the university library in promoting prosperity, well-being and growth for individuals and their communities, and to also reflect on issues that would benefit from heightened focus. And after listening to this session, I know that you'll have many more examples that you could add to this important impact narrative. So let's look at goal number 1, no poverty. We know that the modern world demands language, numeracy, and digital literacy skills as basic fundamental life skills. A study conducted by the Australian Bureau of Statistics found that problem solving in technology-rich environments was low, with only 13% of Australians below level 1 and 31% of Australians evaluated at level 1, with only a 3.1% rated at the highest level, level 3. This data indicates low levels in digital literacies, and libraries have a role to play here. For we know that library programs are essential to advance these critical literacies for success. And in considering our contribution to this goal, we need skillful professionals. And an example that I'd like to share is at the Charles Sturt University, which is one of the largest providers of library education in Australia. And it's educating the library staff of the future. What's interesting to note is that approximately 1/3 of the students who are enrolled at this institution and in the library school are considered of low or medium economic status, many of whom are first in family to attend university. These students, with their real life skills, their real life backgrounds, are passionate advocates for the sustainable development, and with many contributing to programs to improve national and international literacy. Goal 3, good health and well-being. While we are committed to enabling access to quality knowledge for students and staff within our institutions, what's often less visible to many is the access that we offer to communities at large. We know that university libraries support the community by providing access to health collections, and many of our library collections and resources are available to the community at large. After a 2-year research project, the Australian National University transformed its digital literacy programs, including making online modules and guides freely available on the internet for medical students, for those in relational hospitals, health centres, and to the community at large. Institutional repositories play a critical role in enabling global, borderless and free access to research, whether it be through theses, journal papers or other manuscripts, helping others to be informed and to advance their health and wellbeing knowledge. Goal 4, quality education. Australian university libraries, as they are in South Africa, are a place, they are a destination, and this is reflected by being one of the most occupied and frequented facilities on our campuses, and by the 214 million instances of electronic usage here in Australia, which was recorded in 2017, and we know that this figure will only continue to grow. For many, the cost of textbooks is prohibitive, particularly for those with social and economic disadvantage. Starting in 2017, Western Sydney University Library, to combat disadvantage, provided all first-year students with free digital textbooks. And the library played a critical role in establishing and enabling the initiative, which transforms access to information and knowledge. And this program is in direct response to student feedback indicating that the cost of purchasing textbooks was one of the biggest financial hurdles when commencing their higher education. At Victoria University, a block model for teaching has transformed the student learning experience. It's designed to transition students into university life and is already improving outcomes for students from low socioeconomic status, non-English speaking and indigenous backgrounds. The Victoria University Library plays an integral part in the development and facilitation of inquiry and digital literacy programs and are integral partners in the curriculum design and delivery. Goal 5, gender and equity. The majority of Australian universities have made a resounding commitment to reconciliation action plans that provide a framework for organisations to support the national reconciliation movement for Aboriginal and Indigenous citizens. And our libraries have a role to play within that plan and the strategy and its execution. And for example, at Charles Darwin University, the library leads a project to provide preservation and access to Indigenous knowledges. At my institution, at the University of Wollongong, we have a program called Jindaola, which is focused on embedding Indigenous knowledges in the curriculum. And our library is leading a project to look at how we can facilitate the description, the discoverability of Indigenous knowledges that transcend beyond the colonial classification systems that we've used in the past. In looking at Goal 9 for industry, innovation and infrastructure, academic libraries here and abroad are striving to advance the infrastructure, the networks, the standards and best practices that enable research for today and importantly for future generations. The Council of Australian University Libraries define themselves as essential knowledge infrastructures with a track record in supporting the government's National Collaborative Research Infrastructure Strategy. And examples of this include repository infrastructure for the free and open access to research outputs, including publications and data. It's through the subject matter expertise that we provide for needed metadata. It's through our advice and strategic implementation of persistent identifiers. It's through the development of guidelines and interoperability standards that increase industry and community access to research information. CAUL exercises leadership in the development of research data services to ensure that data is well managed and contributes to the aspirational principles of FAIR, where research outputs are findable, accessible, interoperable and reusable. And CAUL is also invested in critical partnerships to extend the research ecosystem. And examples include working with Australia's Academic and Research Network, the Australian Access Federation, to launch a technologies working group focusing on access management. And we can't forget the impact and the influence of university presses that advance open access. And this is demonstrated, for example, by the Australian National Universities Press, which was established 15 years ago as a fully open press. And in 2017, there were over 3.5 million downloads to more than 140 countries across the world. This is big data. These are really evidence, very impactful proof points on the role that university libraries play. Moving to Goal 10, reduced inequalities. Advancing open scholarship and academic research increases opportunities for collaboration amongst researchers and industry, especially internationally. It increases the pace of discovery, provides more opportunities for public engagement with research, and supports a stronger evidence base for the development of policy that benefits our citizens. Through academic libraries, we strive to reduce inequalities through removing barriers to information through community access programs, digitisation initiatives within and external to our institutions. And through the aforementioned repository infrastructure, CAUL libraries provide access to approximately 570,000 research outputs that include journal articles, conference proceedings, book chapters, research papers, and more. And the value of this access is reflected in the 64 million accesses to these collections as recorded in 2017 alone. Over 275,000 theses are available via institutional repositories in Australia, and of these, 95% are openly available and accessed across more than 190 countries. Goal 11, sustainable cities and communities. Within their cities and regions, Australian university libraries collaborate with other institutions, particularly public libraries and other GLAM partners, to enhance capacity and capability building, for deploying technologies for the digital transformation of often special and unique collections. An example of this is a University of Tasmania library, who is collaborating on a project to digitise and make discoverable substantial cultural assets from a particular region within that state. The project will deliver 2 extended reality products for education and tourism, enabling the discovery and sharing of Tasmania's treasures for artists, for remote communities, researchers, industry, tourists and schools, extending well beyond the walls of academia. Goal 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. University libraries have a fundamental role in strengthening institutional and democratic practices in Australia and beyond. Examples of influence include collaborations to reform legislation such as copyright, where provisions for those with disabilities have been introduced. CAUL is a member of the International Alliance of Research Library Associations, and through this we fully support the principles of net neutrality as a means to ensure equitable access to online information and services for all. Net neutrality at its core is a non-discrimination law that promotes freedom of speech and allows for the free and open exchange of ideas, essential for justice and strength within our nations. Goal 17, partnerships for the goals. In unity is strength, and CAUL partners with other associations, agencies and groups to enable synergies from collective beliefs, values, abilities and visions. And the International Alliance of Research Library Associations has issued a values statement that amplifies and augments the importance of value-led initiatives and campaigns that we use in advocacy, negotiations and communications on the role and vitality of research libraries and the knowledge access we provide for the production, preservation of information resources that promotes academic and intellectual freedom and underscores diversity and inclusion. These values are fundamental and we should protect them, defend them and preserve them. So this is an opportunity for all of us to reflect how we are developing our capacity, our capability through the strategic development of university libraries. CAUL and its members, for example, are embracing available technologies and innovations to enable new forms of scholarship, research and learning. And it's vital that we think about and provide thought leadership on needed infrastructure, networks, standards and best practices that enable research and scholarship for today and for future generations, thinking about what are the needs of our students, scholars and researchers today and for tomorrow. So as I close the formal aspect of this presentation, here in Australia, many of our citizens are the beneficiaries of developed economies. We are, however, acutely aware of the inequalities and disadvantages faced in our towns, our regions, and the nation. And we're acutely aware of the growth or the pace of nationalism that we're observing across different countries around the world. Nationalism will introduce new hurdles, barriers for the free flow of information and knowledge. Access to knowledge and research could be limited to the privileged few. CAUL and other academic research library associations must continue to advocate and lobby for the preservation of fundamental values and principles of open, fair and inclusive access to knowledge. This is the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals offer university libraries a platform to promote how essential they are in contributing to the aspiration of these goals and to the advancement of our nations. We have an important story to tell, one that is eloquent and impactful. And we hope that this example from the Council of Australian University Librarians offers a catalyst for thinking by other academic library networks and associations and affiliations to think about how do we come together to showcase what we do, what is our unique value in advancing the aspirations that the United Nations has put forward. So in closing the formal part of this presentation, I extend my deep appreciation to the CAUL board for the publication of this inaugural report. And I would like to thank you for listening to CAUL's approach to thinking about the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. This is a very early campaign for us, and in preparing this report, we know that there is so much more that we can do and the real potential that can be gained by working with the broader community within and beyond Australia. So I thank you for listening to this part of the webinar, and I look forward to hearing your responses, your comments and the questions that you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you for such an eye-opener. I'm sure that I'm not alone in always having wondered what role libraries play in the UN SDGs, but the way you have eloquently put it forward for us, I think it's amazing, and one is already wondering or thinking about ways of us as institutions in South Africa, in Africa, all over the world. How can we follow suit and, do as you guys have done there? You've done a great job, and I think this is such a wonderful learning curve for all of us. I think there's a lot that we can take away from this presentation. And thank you so much for your time and for preparing this for us. Yes, and to Siviwe for linking us up with you. Yes. And to Ingrid for making the platform available as always. Yes, and to all of the colleagues here, if you can just put on the chat any comments you have for Maggie, any questions, that will be greatly appreciated. Thank you. Hi Maggie, I'm not sure if you're following on the comments and questions posed at you on the chat.
I can see a question from Siviwe. So what has CAUL done to create awareness about the SDGs to academic librarians at lower levels? That's a great question, and this is something that I need to actually test and explore. I know that I have certainly shared this approach with my team, and interestingly, I've been working with the university on developing its next strategic plan, of which the Sustainable Development Goals are a feature. The new Deputy Vice Chancellor for Research and Innovation is a very passionate advocate for the SDGs, and so we will be looking for ways to see how academic libraries can, or particularly our academic library, can partner with the research strategy. And I think what we can also, what this process, this report has highlighted for us is thinking about new and different ways of framing what is the purpose of the academic library? What are the new and different ways of being able to talk about where we are impactful and the different types of value that we contribute. So this is still a relatively new initiative and new report, so we still do have much more to do. We are partnering with the Australian Library and Information Association in September to participate in a roundtable with representatives from across the GLAM sectors to look at how we can come together collectively to progress evidence and our ability to contribute to these goals. So it's still quite early days for us, but we see that there's much that we can do. Okay, so I can see a question from Magdalene. University libraries have largely been accused of closing their doors to the public. And she's taken note of the Tasmania collaboration, but could you perhaps respond more to this accusation? I think that's interesting because, when we look at the way that a lot of the content that we now provide, it has, strict conditions around its usage in the licenses that we provide. But one of the things that we have done locally, and as Tasmania has identified, there are university libraries typically have more advanced infrastructure and skills capability than some of our public libraries or some of our museums, historical societies, and so forth. So we have partnered with, for example, historical societies to share our leadership and our abilities, and to extend the use of some of our infrastructure to advance their digital capabilities. And the outcomes are mutually beneficial. For example, for the senior high school students, many of them were required to do research using original sources of information. So they had to go to archives, they had to go to these societies, but they were restricted in terms of the hours that they were open, how many students could use a resource at a particular point in time. So by coming together, we could actually transform the senior high school student learning and research experience, and also expose them to the resources that they would typically find within their academic libraries as well. It also reduced the burden on some of the access issues that we had for some of our unique collections as well. So that's one example. We've also looked at different types of community membership, looking at where we can negotiate community access, particularly to subscribed or licensed resources. So some of these are, I guess, somewhat ad hoc, but they are very tangible ways of being able to look at how you can come together for mutually beneficial outcomes, and also helps to showcase the leadership that academic libraries can provide in advancing community and high school access to knowledge. I also see another question here about the discoverability of indigenous knowledge that transcends the colonial classification system. Could I please expand on this? So what I can do, I can share some examples, and after this webinar, I will share with Sivaway some other initiatives that are taking place around the country that may be of interest to this network. So the work that we're undertaking here at my institution is still in the very early stages of the project. But what it has revealed is that we need to do much more outreach with our Aboriginal communities to better understand how they preserve and disseminate and share and exchange knowledge, and what is the most culturally appropriate way for us to consider how we describe and classify knowledge. There are organisations in Australia that are working actively to apply indigenous and culturally appropriate means for the management of intellectual property and for other knowledge resources. So we know that we have a lot of work to do in this area. We have much to learn from our Canadian colleagues who have done a lot more work in this space, as to our New Zealand friends who have been working with Maori knowledges as well. So I don't have as much to report as I would like, but I hope in another year's time that I'll have more to be able to share with this group. Okay, just looking at some of these other questions here. Speaking about partnerships, how easy was it for you to have several partners when libraries always have budget cuts? And how do university libraries continue to partner and reach out with such strict budgets? And I fully understand that situation because all of us have very scarce resources. And so this is an opportunity to think about, it's about prioritisation. So in terms of, you know, we have to be very selective in the projects that we partner on and think very clearly about what is going to be the benefit for our institutions in partnering. Sometimes you don't need a lot of money to do this. A lot of it is about time and goodwill. So again, there's an opportunity to think about how will this strategically position your institution, either as a thought leader, as someone who is able to develop the capacity of other organisations. So you may have to spend less time in responding to community or other external requests for information because it simply can't be supported by the other partners. But you know, our people are very clever. They come up with ingenious and innovative, creative ways to come up, you know, to respond to projects. And I also like to think about this in terms of how will this build capacity for my own team. So by participating in this project, will this actually build digital literacies, digital capabilities, or identify new ways of optimising available infrastructure that will benefit my institution? So we will always face budget cuts, but when we can leverage special collections, unique collections in particular, that has unique benefit for our researchers and our scholars who then will potentially have more universal and open access to these collections, which in turn extends their research and scholarship capacity and their outputs. Okay. Can academic librarians include the SDGs to be part of our operational plans or performance contracts? I think that's a great way of thinking about how you can think about contributing to these goals in terms of advancing, you know, again, infrastructure, capacity and so forth. And I think what is interesting, this can provide a new language, a new vocabulary for you to be part of those strategic discussions with the executive leaders of your institution. So these are great conversations to be having with your presidents, with your deputy presidents or your deputy vice chancellors and so forth, to show the purpose and the functions that libraries perform. And what I like about this, this notion that's been put forward is that for many of our staff, it lifts us up beyond the silos of the work that we do and showcases how purposeful our work is within and beyond our institutions. So I think that's a great idea. I think that you'll generate lots of really exciting discussion and debate within your libraries, within the units and across the university portfolios. There's another question here from Teresa asking whether my institution is involved in any of the Wikipedia projects to promote access to education and information. Teresa, we don't do this formally, but I do know that many of my library staff are very active in this space, and you've given me an idea to take back to the Council of Australian University Librarians as well, to look at what we might be able to do more strategically or in a more focused way in contributing to this body of knowledge. So I can see a question from Magdalene. Which of the SDGs appeal to academic libraries more? I think that's a great question, and typically I think we would identify with Goal 4, quality education, and there's an opportunity there. I think also Goal 9, industry, innovation and infrastructure. When you think about the huge demand for access to research that is generated by our institutions to promote innovation within industry in its many forms. I think that's also an area to advance how we position libraries as essential knowledge infrastructure and how we can promote the free and open exchange of knowledge, research outputs, whether it be through publications, through research data and so forth, and the leadership that we would provide in understanding the issues around metadata, standards, interoperability issues, the role of persistent identifiers and so forth. So I think those two do stand out in particular, and possibly also, where am I? Goal 10, reduced inequalities. Many of us would partner with other units across our institutions on pathway programs, looking at how we remove hurdles for those who otherwise may not have access to university knowledge and information resources. So I think, to cherry pick, those could be a few that you could potentially focus on. And I can see the Wikimania conference has SDGs as its theme this year, and I think that will increasingly start to see that being a key area of focus for many conferences, particularly those focused on, enabling our citizens. So just while we're waiting for any further questions, I'll just quickly make a note about follow-up on indigenous knowledges. So after this webinar, I'm sure that you'll engage in further conversation, and hopefully this might be the catalyst to identify a few key actions that this group may be able to commit to, and to see how collectively and individually you can showcase your contribution. I think this exercise has shown, while there are some great examples, many of them are somewhat ad hoc, and there is an opportunity to have much more of a more strategic collective approach to this. Okay, there's a comment here that we're seeing a downward trend in the volume of books being borrowed. And I think that's probably true across most of our academic libraries across the world. But what we do see is the sharp trajectory, growing trajectory in the way that electronic and digitized information is being used and consumed. And I've been quite staggered as to that continued growth. And that's something that is probably less easy to see. And I think, what we are seeing, students, scholars and so forth, the rise of the digital humanities, looking at different ways of conducting research. A lot of it is looking at how do we use technologies to machine read, to transcribe, to analyse vast swathes of electronic data. So the book will have its place, but you know, we see, I'm sure it's very similar in your institutions, that upward rise of electronic resources. So what we need to be conscious of, as we know, a lot of that access can be restricted, and that's why the principles and programs such as FAIR are so important. And just to further add to the books borrowed, I think there's an opportunity, and I saw some examples of this when I was at the IATL conference recently in Perth in Western Australia, is how we're transforming our spaces to provide different learning and research experience opportunities for our students, knowing that they do engage with information in different ways. So I think there may be new opportunities for us to think about how do we facilitate learning? How do we facilitate research and scholarship through both, you know, students using information and knowledge resources, but also how the different spaces and the experiences that we provide for them to collaborate, to co-create knowledge and so forth. There's another question here. What could be some of the challenges as academic libraries in our efforts to achieve the SDGs? I think some of it comes down to thinking about, well, what would be evidence? So some of it will be in the quantitative data that, you know, that we provide. But I think there's an opportunity for us to think about, well, what might be other forms of evidence? So are there opportunities to do forms of research, looking at developing case studies? Here in Australia, we have a national exercise which looks at research excellence, and most recently there was an impact and engagement agenda. So where are we influencing policy, for instance? Where are we influencing practice? Who is, you know, where are we advocating for change? Who's listening to that advocacy and responding to that? So this will give us an opportunity to really challenge the way that we think about where we're being impactful, where are we delivering real value for the benefit of our institutions and for communities at large. I don't have all of the answers for that, and a lot of that will be nuanced to the context that you operate within. However, I think that's where those broader discussions across your institution are really valuable. Who do you partner with? Who do you collaborate with? Because we're part of a very large ecosystem in the way that we deliver services and resources that promote learning and research excellence. So these are really good conversations to start across your institution, across your academic portfolios, your research portfolios. I can see from the online chat and discussion that you're going to have very lively and focused discussion in your upcoming meetings. And I'd be delighted to hear what some of those actions and outcomes might be, and whether you see that there's an opportunity for some kind of engagement with the Council of Australian University Libraries, so we can have a multi-region presence or approach to thinking about how do we contribute to the SDGs. So, Siva, Teresa, is there anything that you'd like to say as this, I guess, the questions are starting to wind down? Is there anything that you'd particularly like to comment on or share with your colleagues as a result of this webinar?
Maggie, nothing from my side. I think a lot has been said, even on the chat as well. Maybe Severe, Ingrid, anything from your side?
Not from my side, except to just thank you, Maggie, for having accepted the invitation to do a presentation for South African librarians. We really appreciate your effort. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been my absolute pleasure, and I was so delighted that I had a chance to meet you in person. And thank you for sharing your day with me and from CAUL as well.
Thank you, Maggie, and thanks to all the colleagues who made time to join this. Thank you so much. All right, thank you, Maggie. Thank you.
All right.
All right.
I will log out now. Have a great day.
You have a wonderful one too.